Over the past few weeks of playing Spear and Dagger, I've been working on perfecting my rotation. I've gotten to the point where I can consistently deal upwards of 250,000 damage against a dummy. In this instance, using say a remedy, we could get 290,000. Now in group PvE boss fights, this rotation can be performed back to back to back so long as you have teammates using Deadly Marker, which you generally will in optimized group fights. Therefore, you should easily be able to deal well over 1,000,000 damage per minute. Now earlier I posted a video which did cover my current state of the rotation I was using to output good damage, particularly competing in say Gate of Infinity, and that's what you can use as somewhat guide to determine if you're doing good damage or not. However, Gate of Infinity is somewhat of an isolated situation because you can keep retrying if you say don't perform too well. You don't get heavy attacks, you retry. So we look for a more consistent rotation, and we can find that by testing on say dummies. These would then simulate a boss in your PvE co-op dungeons or dimensional trials, as it can be very important to get good damage in here. Not just to get smoother and quicker runs, but in order to actually complete some of them. As soon as we get into say 3-star dungeons, it'll be even more important to have good damage output. Therefore, I want to show my updated skill build and rotation. Ultimately, this is it. And it has a few different things compared to what I was running before. We still run that Inject Venom for the poison, our Sentinel's Bastion for the heavy attack. It's not just you, but also your entire team gets it too. Our Umbral Spirit for the extra damage on your critical hits. And now this is a change. I'm actually using Bloodleech Aura, because if you get that thing upgraded, it can actually do a lot of damage, especially combined with Umbral Spirit and the Inject Venom, the poisons. As soon as you get buff duration to a decent level, this lasts much longer, outputs even more hits, and it's just damage that's happening over time while you're using all of your other abilities. To take it a step further, you eventually may want to get the Junoboat Spear and get the extra damage buff from there while using Bloodleech Aura. Something I will need to test as I still need to get that spear. But the alternative is what we were using before, to run Fatal Stigma. And then they're about the same on average damage output, but Bloodleech Aura will be more reliable, consistently dealing all of those damage hits. You need the Gale for the attack speed, but then we have Culling Arc. One thing that I was not aware of was the fact that you can use Gale Rush on your target, and this actually adds a burst stack, but then you can get that to 5 by using Culling Arc with the specialization Critical Burst. So therefore you use both of those to get the 5 burst stacks on your target, versus what I had it before was instead of using Phoenix Barrage, I had Cyclonic Fury, and that would give the 5 stacks. Now we can get those stacks sooner, and we can then take advantage of Phoenix Barrage to get all those damage hits. I still recommend using a Cleaving Moonlight for the attack speed buff before you go and use your Phoenix Barrage and then your Explosive Furies. You need to have its specializations here, both of them, the attack speed and the consecutive use, in order to make use of that. And you're just using Cleaving Moonlight once, and while you see that bar around it, that's the duration you have the attack speed buff. The faster you can output these attacks, the better. You will follow that up with Inject Venom, which is just the second hit. You can see when you use it once, that's when you coat your weapon with poison. But if you use it a second time, it's an actual attack. But that second time is boosted based on how many poison stacks you have on your target. So you want to get some poison stacks first before you use that. You follow then that up with your Abyssal Cleave, which is also a new addition from what I was using before. And you have Critical Cleave with that, giving a critical damage boost and a much higher chance that that next attack will crit. And it specifies the next skill you use, so all the attacks on the next skill, which will then be Slaughtering Slash with the 6 attacks and the explosion. Compared to all of your abilities, this one is the best one to buff up, even versus Phoenix Barrage. And after that, you follow it up with Culling Arcs, Cleaving Moonlight, and your Javelin Infernos. And the reason why we delay the Javelin Infernos to the end of the rotation is because we want to try and get as many hits as possible while we have Umbral Spirit active. And Javelin Inferno is only going to be like 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits over the course of the time you have to actually cast it, versus Slaughtering Slash is going to be 6 hits. So when you have buff duration at about the level I do, 30%, you should have enough uptime on Umbral Spirit for it to last all the way until you finish using Slaughtering Slash. Now this gets you a rotation that can deal over 290,000 damage here on, say, your dummy, which is going to be the equivalent of your boss, so long as you're not getting interrupted by mechanics. And you can see me use all of those abilities in that particular order, and as far as I can tell, this is going to give you the most amount of damage. I've done a lot of tests comparing all the different things you can use, and this is what I found works best. A bit of an update to what I was using before. You can read some notes there as to what each ability is supposed to give you, and I hope I explained it adequately. You need to be making use of all of your specializations in order to output the most amount of damage. Again, Culling Arc here needs critical burst to get those 5 burst stacks on your target. Once you have those 5 burst stacks on your target, now your Explosive Fury is going to gain a 15% damage boost. Your Slaughtering Slash is guaranteed to explode with 5 stacks because you now have 5 burst stacks. If you so by chance have more, say, Ignite stacks, that would be good, but that's random, not something you can rely on. Or you might even get 10 stacks and it just explodes before you use your Slaughtering Slash. So we're going for reliability. We use the Gale Rush plus Culling Arc and we end up with our 5 burst stacks. We use the Explosive Fury, which is 5 attacks. You use back to back, which then is increased by 15% because of those burst stacks. And this is pretty much your best damaging ability. Now, unfortunately, Abyssal Cleave does not actually improve all of the damage of Explosive Fury. So Critical Cleave is not good to use to buff Explosive Fury. That's why we use it with Slaughtering Slash, even though the combined damage from Explosive Fury is higher. If the devs do any change in the future to Spear in terms of PvE damage, I would highly appreciate them to change this so that Explosive Fury does not count as a separate skill each time you use its casts. You should be able to use this 5 times consecutively while it remains as the same skill for the benefit of, say, Critical Cleave and the benefit of mana. You should only have to pay 129 mana to cast this 5 times. Same with Javelin Inferno, because this is one of the big struggles of playing Spear, mana regeneration. And yeah, it's a definite real issue. Unless you're playing with a good healer who's always putting their fountain down and who's healing you specifically with, say, their mana regen abilities. Now, do be aware there are some boss fights that you can actually cheese with regards to mana. For example, here, you can see I'm pretty much out of mana, can't use abilities, but we go and interact with the sheep, get the shield, and we're technically out of combat. So I can use some milk, drink this milk right here, and it gives an insane amount of mana. And since we're not getting hit by mechanics, we're not getting put back in combat, so Valley of Slaughter, no problem with mana right there. Just have some milk. This gives you massive amounts of mana back. You should get it all, and you just need milk and some protein to craft it. Very simple. But like I was saying, I feel it really needs to be changed that Explosive Fury is on all 5 casts considered one ability. Javelin should have the same treatment because both are really mana heavy consuming right now. But looking at the other specializations, I do highly recommend having the extra shield on Sentinel's Bastion. It's just a really good survivability effect. You can time it for when certain mechanics might happen. You can run lower hit points than everybody else and get away with surviving because you have this extra shield. And otherwise, it helps just when you're farming mobs to give yourself the shield, so when you're going to get hit, you're not actually losing hit points and just the shield. And of course, you want to have the team benefit here, so everybody gains the heavy attack. And also it's for your personal gains, because normally this would only give you 121 heavy attack on level 2 here, versus with the team benefits now 185. That's 200 max at a level 5 skill. With Slaughtering Slash, we want to make it 6 hits to have have that benefit there. We also want the explosive damage boost. And with Phoenix Barrage, we want to make that there. So you have 10 hits, it's massive damage output, and to have the critical aftermath to give you the extra critical damage for when you're using explosive fury. As you can see, you will gain that with the order of this rotation. And on your dagger skills, you need to have the cleaving moonlight here. The attack speed buff is great, you just output your attacks faster, and you need to have consecutive use for that then. And umbral spirit, you need to have the duration increase and the damage increase. And yes, I have ditched then brutal incision, and that's worth it from what I can see compared to using all of these other abilities. There's just nothing I would switch out. I highly recommend having block blade as your defense ability. It will also give you an extra boost to mana regen and just give you a flat amount of extra mana whenever you block one of those boss's fury attacks. It's just, again, mana will be an issue for you when the bosses don't have many fury attacks. And your passives here, this is what I recommend, but you can have, say, instead of Assassin's Step, some bosses might have some defensiveness, and so you could use Destructive Fang, but in most cases they don't. And so if there are some adds to kill, this Assassin's Step does help with the mana. And you don't generally get hit enough for Malice Surge to really be useful. So again, that's the rotation I recommend, with these specializations on these abilities for Spear, and then these ones for Dagger. That's the full power setup there in your tray then. And the last thing to touch on would be, say, Weapon Mastery, and nothing's changed here. I still recommend using daggers as your primary weapon, not for the auto attack damage, because technically using your spear is a bit higher auto attack damage. People have done tests and you can confirm that, but in most cases you're not usually auto attacking. You're casting skills or you're playing mechanics, and that's it. You don't really get much time to auto attack, so there's no big deal there. What you want to look at is the benefits you gain by mastery by having that weapon as the active weapon. You gain all of these benefits. So if I have the spear active, I gain all these. If I then switch to having the daggers active, I would now gain all of these. So it does matter which one you have, but mastery will be reworked in the future, and ultimately Dagger is usually best, especially because of Deep Grudge, 8% extra critical damage, and then you pretty much gain the same benefits as you would through Spear. Now there will be a link to my quest log in the video description below. You can see my current build, what I'm using, and my desired build, pretty much just switching 2 rings. And you can see then all of the skills, how it's set up here with the specializations, if that's easier for you than just copying from what I showed in this video. My multi-target setup is here as well, and you can see the link to the video for my multi-target setup, and nothing's really changed there. But that is like min-max multi-target, not great for single target, and in most cases I generally just run this build the whole time because you really have nice high multi-target damage even with this setup. Like, you've got your Venom, you've got your Umbral Spirit, you've got your Blood Leech Aura, Culling Arc, and then your main damage source is going to be Explosive Fury and Javelin Inferno. It's just absolute massive amounts of multi-target damage here. You see this on these enemies, and then the Javelin is just huge. You're going to melt through anything, and you don't necessarily have to min-max like I show in this video, but you can. It's an option. As for PvP, that for me is still a work in progress. I am farming arenas. This is like a build I would use in small scale. I have another build with, say, magic and ranged invasion for, say, large scale fights. But I'll get back to you on that in another video. I just want to grind a bit more arena and make sure I'm confident with everything. Ultimately, thanks for watching. A special thank you to all these channel members, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.